Elrigu Namaskara. The Swami Vivekananda had a great confidence in the nation's youth. Most of his utterances were targeted at youths. Swami Vivekananda envisaged the rise of his future workers through youths. In this regard, Mangalore University established Swami Vivekananda Study Centre on January 12th, 2021. So, in order to spread the message of Swami Vivekananda among the youths, to undertake the publication of books, periodicals, research papers, and digital contents, to organize study circle, youth circle, talks, workshops, seminars, conferences, activities on Swami Vivekananda for all works of life. So in this regard, Mangalore University, once again, I'm repeating, established Vivekananda Study Centre on January 1st, so January 12th, 2021, on the 159th birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda. The study center conducting Viveka Vani, a series of lectures on the life and teachings of Swami Vivekananda on 12th of every month. In short while, we are about to hear the 6th lecture of this series by Pujya Swami Atmashraddhanandaji, Secretary of Ramakrishna Mission Ashram, Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. So now I call upon Sripati Kaluraya, convener of Swami Vivekananda Study Centre, Mangalore University, to welcome Pujya Swamiji and the gathering. Over to Professor Sripati Kaluraya, sir, convener, Swami Vivekananda Study Centre, Mangalore University.
Good evening to all. I am very proud to welcome today to give the 6th lecture series program of the Vivekananda Study Centre of Mangalore University, and Swami Atmashraddhanandaji from Kanpur, UP, has agreed to be a resource person today, and he is to enlighten us about the Vivekananda's views on how to make our country Vikas, or developing. I'm very proud that we are continuously every month, the 12th of every month, in the sense, it was January 12th, 2021, we inaugurated this study center at Mangalore University. And since then, every month, the 12th of every month that we are organizing lecture series program, and this is 6th in the series. And we are getting overwhelming encouragement from people from all over India. And special thank I should say to Mr. Ranjan from the Ramakrishna Ashram of Mangalore, and also the university authorities for their support for us to go along with this kind of program. In spite of we have several programs in our plan to be implemented in future, but due to the pandemic, COVID-19, where we could not join together, in spite of that, we are doing it virtually, and all this is done with the special interest taken by Ranjan. So I once again thank Ranjan for taking keen interest in arranging for this kind of the lecture series program. And today, the 6th lectures of the Vivekananda Study Centre is to be delivered by Swami Atmashraddhanandaji, the Secretary of Ramakrishna Mission Ashram, Kanpur, UP. I am very proud to introduce Swamiji to the participants in this virtual meeting. Swamiji Atmashraddhanandaji joined the Ramakrishna Monarch Order in 1989 at its Bangalore Center, and received his final sannyasa vows in 1999. From 2004 to 2016, almost 12 years, he was in Chennai Ramakrishna Math, where he was the editor of one of the very oldest, in the sense, continuously running Vedanta Kesari, a cultural spiritual monthly. And for 12 years, he was guide for Vivekananda Study Circle at IIT Madras, where he used to conduct a Sunday class for study circle. For about 2 years, he was one of the monastic guide and instructor at the monastic probationers training center at Ramakrishna Math, Belur Math near Kolkata in West Bengal. Since 2018, Swamiji assumed the office of Secretary of Ramakrishna Mission Ashram, Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. And I'm very glad to introduce, and I, on behalf of Mangalore University and on behalf of Ramakrishna Ashram, Mangalore, I welcome you wholeheartedly, Swamiji. Welcome to you.
Namaste.
And I welcome all the participants who have been with us every 12th for 1 hour to listen to Viveka Vani from various scholars in the field of Vivekananda studies. So I welcome once again all the participants, and once again I request all of you to support us even in future. Welcome one and all.
So, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Swamiji, in the previous sessions, we had a inauguration done by Pujya Swami Atmashraddhanandaji Maharaj, the study center. On that day, Pujya Swami Mahamedananji addressed the gathering on the university auditorium. It was students were about 1,500 students were witnessed that massive program on the January 12th. Later on, every month 12th, we were conducting this Viveka Vani program. The first program was under 3 programs, Viveka Vani programs was happened in the campuses. Later on, due to the COVID lockdown, we are shifted to the virtual. So in this regard, Swamiji, so we first Swami Mangalnathananji, Professor Raghuttama Rao, Swami Prakashanandaji, Swami Bodhamayanandaji, and Mr. Vivek Modi, Dr. Vivek Modi conducted this session successfully. So we are heading towards a 6th session in the series, Swamiji. So we are very happy to have you, Swamiji. Today's topic as Atma Vikas, Swami Vivekananda's recipe for Rastra Vikas. So Swamiji, we are very excited to hear you. So over to you, Swamiji. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you to respected professor, and thank you to Ranjan, and also to Swami Jitakamanandaji Maharaj, the secretary of the Ramakrishna Math in Mangalore. And my greetings to all the people who are there in this online session. First of all, am I audible?
Yes, Swamiji, very much.
Very.
Yeah.
So let me first of all congratulate you for taking this move, for initiating this series of talks. So we have to live with this new reality, the reality of online talks. So that's what we have got from the Corona and the pandemic and the lockdown situations that we went through. So I feel very happy that we are here to share some thoughts with you, spend some time with some young, educated young men and women, and also to certain devotees who would be joining us. So before I begin, let me invoke Swamiji's blessings, Swami Vivekananda's blessings. I'll chant a pranama mantra composed by one of the brother disciples of Swami Vivekananda, paying rich tributes to Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda. Om Namah Shri Atirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Even before I enter the subject which we have chosen for today's discussion, I would also refer to, while Ranjan had made the things ready, and I had the privilege of being introduced by the professor. Let me add that I have been to Mangalore several times. So at least a dozen times. I also spoke at the ashram, and I visited Mangalore, so many places. It's beautiful beach, yeah, all the temples which are there, right from the Mangala Devi temple, or right up to the other some Gorakhnath temple or some other temples which are there. So it is always a pleasure to recall my visit to Mangalore. So I had spent, which is not given in the introduction, around 13 years in Mysore and Bangalore. So I'm acquainted with the place. So it's good that the Mangalore University and the Ramakrishna Mission Mangalore have been together coordinating to organize these lecture series. This is a time when we need to strengthen ourselves and also to discover our real purpose of life, the real purpose of being a human. So before I go into it, let me spend some time over the subject that we have for discussion. We have chosen Atma Vikas as a means to Rastra Vikas, or Atma Vikas as a recipe or a method for Rastra Vikas. The word Rashtra has got many things included in it. The nation does not mean only geography. Of course, there is a geography. There is a very important geography. You cannot have a nation without a geographical land. So we have this land called India for centuries, and it has been interwoven with our thinking very deeply. You know, many times when we take sankalpa in doing a puja, be it a Vedic puja or Puranic type of puja, we always have a sankalpa being said. And in the sankalpa, we will say Jambu Dvipe Bharatakhande, which means this land was like a continent called the Jambu Dvipa. And in that, you have the section called Bharat, Bharatakhanda, where we are standing and saying this sankalpa. So that's how it has become part of our thinking. So one is a geographical entity, but it also includes all the characteristics of that. But Rashtra also includes our culture, it includes our history. And most importantly, it contains or it points out the most central principle of a Rashtra. I'll explain that further, what I am trying to say. So Rashtra includes many things. Rashtra includes the geography, the people, the culture, the weather, its trade, its economy, its scientific achievements, its numerous institutions. So Rashtra is a complete approach. Now let's analyze the word further. We have two English words. One is called civilization, another is called culture. So civilization is basically the type of infrastructural development as well as the social institutions that we make. If you look at very carefully, we have a very rich civilizational heritage also. We go back to the excavations which were made in India. And even there are many unrecorded parts of our history where it speaks of the type of civilizational progress that we have made. Even just a few centuries back, we had the great Vijayanagara Samrajya, where so much of Portuguese travelers have left their accounts, their travelogues about the opulence of the place, and also many how it is interwoven with religion or our dharma. Now, that is one part of our understanding, that is civilization. Sometimes it may happen that a person or a nation rather would have developed very well in its civilization. But when it comes to culture, it may still be very gross or materialistic. In terms of culture, India has had many things to offer, and we have a very rich culture. That is why Swami Vivekananda loved Rashtra in all its aspects. You know, he went to the West. His going to the West was something very significant. First of all, he was the first Hindu monk. I underline the term Hindu monk, that who crossed the ocean, as it was called, the black water, and the Kala Pani, and go to America. Before that, we had a few scholars going, we had a few representatives going, or some private citizens going, but not like a Hindu monk who is taken vows related to poverty, chastity, and to religious observations. Somebody going all the way. So when he went there, he actually went with the idea that he will present the Indian spiritual ideas to the West, and in return get some money. It looks very interesting. Such a huge country, Swamiji wanted to help. Now we take huge World Bank loans to do anything. We have international funds coming to us sometimes to develop infrastructure and all that. But look at the intense love and sincerity with which Swamiji went to the West. He said, I'll bring some money and start some institutions. We should study the history of India at that time, the time when Swamiji was physically alive with us. So he went there to bring some funds in exchange of the spiritual ideas and spiritual heritage of India to be given to the West. So he was very much interested in the civilizational growth, in the infrastructural growth, in the social growth, the education, or the social development. He was very much interested in that. That's how he went to the West. And he was a very keen observer. When he went to the West, he visited a jail. In fact, he said, he writes in one of his letters that here they call it as reformatory. They don't call it a jail. How well they are treated. Swamiji was very impressed with that. Similarly, he tried to study their customs to be brought to India, which he thought were useful for the Indian situation. But then Swamiji visited the West twice. Once, he's very well known, he went to Chicago and he gave a talk. After he came back, after 2 years, because of the intense activity, his whole physical frame had become very tired. So the doctor said another sea journey will do him good, and going to the West. So he went for the second time also. At that time, he was not bothered about this civilizational thing we just now spoke about. He was speaking about the spiritual side of man, and how he said we must be cautious about how certain things from the West we need not learn. There are many things we need to learn, but there are certain things we need not learn. What were they? The intense materialism. He said we need not import into our country. Swamiji loved India. Swamiji spoke of the Rashtra, India as a mother. See, this calling India as a motherland is unique to India. In Germany, for instance, they don't call it as motherland. They call it as fatherland. Here it is motherland. So when we speak of mother, there is a deep sense of intensity or love, intensity of love, affection, openness, intimacy. All that is there in the word motherland. So Swami Vivekananda tried to emphasize that India has to be developed. Rashtra Nirmana has to happen. For that, he also spoke of India. I'll read a paragraph from one of his teachings from the 4th volume of the Complete Works. Swamiji says, "Shall India die?" He tries to kind of warn us. Shall India die? Then from the word, all spirituality will be extinct. All moral perfection will be extinct. All sweet-souled sympathy for religion will be extinct. All ideality will be extinct. And its place will reign the duality of lust and luxury as the male and female deities, with money as its priest, fraud, force, and competition, its ceremonies, and human soul, its sacrifice. Such a thing can never be. That's how Swamiji warned us, and also he said such a thing cannot happen also. He said India will continue to live and will live upholding these ideals of moral perfection, of spirituality, of sweet-souled sympathy for each other, and all the good things that we can think of. Now, having said all this, having made this introductory remark, now I will come to another side of the issue. And that is, we have to develop one is civilizational heritage, the development of the infrastructure. Now we are much better than what we were, let's say, 100 years back. We have much better facilities in every way, though there are many more things, many steps to be taken forward. Whether it is a road, whether it is railway, whether it is air travel, whether digital technology and all that, so many things. But look at the other side of India also. We have a very high rate of depression, a very high rate of young people killing themselves. We have also a lot of domestic violence. We have people who sometimes feel they are aimless. Why should that happen along with all this? That is because we have not paid to another side of our life and another side of our social and cultural development, which is the development of our personality. By personality, I don't mean this external view of the personality. How a person looks, his certain courtesies, what he follows, certain language that he uses, the way he dresses, the way he addresses, all these have got a place. But that's not the real personality. The real personality is what we call the core of the personal ethics, the character ethics. What kind of a person is he? Recently, there was a video which showed that somewhere in the West, a van carrying, I think, Amazon's certain goods, it broke down. It was just in the corner of a road. And as soon as it broke down, the driver went in search of something and the door was opened of that van. So many people, all well dressed, they're simply getting down from their different places and looting the parcels kept in that. Which means that we have developed some kind of a morality because of the fear of police. In fact, Swami Vivekananda told this years ago. He said that, I again quote Swamiji as it is. He says, now we are not much more moral than the animals. We are only held down by the whips of society. If society said today, I will not punish you if you steal, we would just make a rush for each other's property. It is the policeman that makes us moral. It is social opinion that makes us moral. And really, we are little better than animals. How do we grow from that animal stature to our real stature, which is human and divine? That's the issue before us. That's an issue which we all should address ourselves to. Because as human beings, that's our real privilege, our prerogative. Our prerogative is not that we can live like an animal. So what does an animal do? In the Hitopadesha, it's a very ancient text. We know it more for stories, number of stories. But it is also full of many wise verses. So in one of the verses, right at the beginning of that, the Hitopadesha says, Ahara nidra bhayamaithunam cha samanametat pashubhe manushyanam. That is, there are ahara, nidra, bhayamaithunam. These four characteristics, they're samanam, they're same. There is no difference between animal and man as far as these four characteristics are concerned. Ahara, taking food. Whether you take food in a nice plate served with all the facilities and a tasty food, or an animal eating from his small pot. Ultimately, both are taking food only. It is to satisfy their hunger, satisfy a basic bodily need. Nidra, sleep, whether you sleep in an AC room with all the facilities and a very cushion which is very soft, or you sleep in the street corner, or lie down under a tree in open sky. Well, basically you are only sleeping. Or bhaya and maithuna, which means fear and procreation. These four things are common between man and the animal. So what makes us separate is dharmo vishesha adhikatara. It is the dharma. It is the sense of right and wrong, the sense which makes us live a socially and ethically pure life, that makes us really human beings. Dharmena hina pashuvis samana. Without dharma, we are as good as pashu, which has got these four characteristics which we also share. So now let's understand this dharmena hina pashuvis samana further. We are to build ourselves to understand the word and the life better. Building ourselves means what? See, nature has brought us to this present state where we are all humans. We have developed our say physique to a particular point. Evolution has brought us to this particular thing. Maybe in our evolutionary march, we were something else to look at thousands of years ago. And now we are to look like this. We have developed so many things. But really speaking, we are human. The nature has brought us to this point of the human development. That's fine. But there is a certain other development which has to take place in order to make us a complete human being. Now, what is this other development? What is this next development, which is at the very basis of the nation which we are speaking of? You know, Swami Vivekananda always spoke of, and at the beginning I referred to the central idea of every nation. Swami Vivekananda said, as far as India is concerned, and his views were based, very enlightened views. They were based on a lot of study and a lot of deep thinking. He had traveled all over. You know, Ranjan said at the beginning of this talk that Swamiji addressed most of his teachings to the youth. He is right. But I may also add it, that when Swamiji went to the West, it was not always the youth people or young people he was addressing to. He was addressing very enlightened minds. Many of them were very youthful, many of them were not. But when he came to India, he definitely focused more on youth. So he had gone across the world. He was the first monk, as I said, to have traveled so much. And that had given him a very comprehensive idea of different civilizations. He was also a remarkable student of history. One of Swamiji's writings, it is called Memoirs of European Travel. Actually, originally it's in Bengali. It has got its English translation, Memoirs of it appears in the 7th volume of the complete works. It has got its English translation and all our regional languages, including Hindi, Kannada, Tamil translations are also there. So in these, you will find Swamiji's enormous, in today's language, general knowledge about the history, the human history. So in that, you will find Swamiji saying one important thing, that I have studied different nations. I have studied their culture. I've studied their civilizational heritage. And now I find in India, what is the basic principle on which India holds on it to? He says, it is religion. When Swamiji returned from the West in 1897, he gave a series of talks, beginning from Colombo, which was at that time under the British India. It got freed in 1920s or 25 or 30. So before that, it was part of the British colonial setup. So Swamiji landed at Colombo, and from there he started giving, wherever he went, people welcomed him, and he gave talks. He And these talks were systematically recorded, many of them. Towards the end, a few were not recorded, but most of these were recorded. And recorded not in today's sense of using a tape recorder and record it. There was no tape recorder much of it that time, just it was in a very, very rudimentary stage. So it was recorded either in longhand or shorthand. So Swamiji went from Colombo, it's in Sri Lanka now, to Jaffna, then came to Rameshwaram, then further to Parmakudi, to Madurai, Chennai, and then Calcutta, then to what we call today as Pakistan. He went to Lahore, he went to Rawalpindi, he went to further he came to Almora. And that's how these are called lectures from Colombo to Almora. These are such very important lectures to understand Swamiji's idea of the Rashtra Nirmana. There was a time in India when most of the people who were struggling to work for India's freedom, they held that book with them. They read it like their scripture. And almost every one of them was found to have a copy of the lectures from Colombo to Almora, because in those lectures you'll find Swamiji dwelling at length on the depths and with very, very deep questions of life as well as Indian development. I would recommend everyone who is listening to this talk, please download that on the net, that book, Lectures from Colombo to Almora, or Swami Vivekananda's Indian Lectures is another name for that. And please read them. You will be very immensely benefited by them. So in those lectures, repeatedly Swamiji says this, that the central point on which the Indian civilization and Indian culture stands is dharma or religion. Without that, he says, India cannot exist. I am reminded of Mark Tully. You know about Mark Tully. He is I think he's still there. He is the British correspondent to India. So Mark Tully is supposed to have said in one place that when it comes to spirituality and religion, India alone is a millionaire. All other nations are paupers. Now, this is something which is coming from a British man. Now, Swami Vivekananda had said the same thing. He said, the whole land is suffused with spirituality. This he emphasized, but then it's no use saying that whole land is suffused with spirituality and we live an extremely materialistic life without any spiritual orientation. So Swami Vivekananda's one important point, let us keep in mind, that if we have to do Rashtra Nirmana, in the sense we have just used, that is developing culture, developing spiritual life, developing art, your finer arts, and all that which makes the cultural aspect of the nation, our literature, our view of life, our ultimate destiny to which the human being has to finally lead to, we have to remain wedded to our deep, the Indian ideals, the Vedic ideals. And Swami Vivekananda, you will find that he is speaking of development of character, development of personality. This development of character and personality is what is very important in really bringing Swamiji's ideas into our daily life. Simply saying, of course, reading Swami Vivekananda is a wonderful thing, and quoting him is a wonderful thing. But even more important that is, how do we practice his teachings in our life? So this practice of teaching of his life happens only when we try to bring change in ourselves. This Swami Vivekananda called as personality development. So not the personality development sometimes we get to hear, somebody went for a personality development. Long years ago, I had attended a talk by, she was an elderly lady who was the vice chancellor of a women's university in Gujarat. So she was recalling an incident. The incident was this, that during the college vacation, one of the girls, when she came back after the vacation, the teacher asked the girl, how did you spend your time during the vacation? She said, I attended 1 month course on personality development. So this very respectable old lady, she said, oh, what did you learn in the personality development camp? She said, well, the girl said, they taught us how to dress, how to greet, how to dance, how to attend a party. Well, she was surprised. She asked the little girl, did they teach you how to remain honest, how to speak truth, how to ever remain deeply committed to higher values of life, to read your own scriptures? The girl had nothing to say. She said, no, nothing of that type was taught to us. So it's only external thing. If we teach, external things are happening, we are not really touching the core of personality development. And the core of personality development, there is the mind. Let us take care of the mind. Swami Vivekananda says that it is a mind. It is in mind that a person is victorious, or it is in the mind that a person feels defeatist. So if the mind is pure, you are pure. Whatever you think, you will be. If you think yourself weak, weak you will be. If you think yourself strong, strong you will be. What a powerful idea Swamiji gives. So let us try to think of that. How do we develop ourselves? How do we develop our inner character? In that sense, now let us go further and ask this question. What is this character development? And what is character, by the by? Is character something like in the films we see, oh, it is a very noble character, or it's not a very noble character? We see like that. But let's go deeper. Character or charitra is called Sat Charitra. In the Kathopanishads, one of the very ancient books, there the teacher, the Rishi says, Na virato duscharitat, na shanto na samahitaha. That is, unless your charitra becomes free from all evil tendencies, na duscharitat. There should be no duscharitra or evil tendencies. Until that happens, until your mind becomes calm, you are not fit for a higher life. So let's think of it. What is character then? So character, as we see, is a bundle of our samskaras. If the samskaras are pure, our character is also pure. If the character, if the samskaras are not very pure, the character also is not very pure. Now, what are these samskaras? So we have to understand what this term samskara means. So samskara means something which has been done repeatedly, again and again. Whenever we do an action, that action, while it gets over, we do some action, it gets over, action is over. It gets over, right, but it also leaves an impression deep on our mind. And this deep impression has a tendency to repeat itself. So if we do some action, again we want to do it. Suppose somebody has got the krodh samskaras. So he became angry, and through that anger, he did something. Maybe he has slapped somebody, or maybe he has taken his object and thrown or done something more heinous. So that action is over. It has a moral implication. It may lead to some a police action or some kind of a social reaction. That's one side of it. But there's another side. What's happening with the man himself? One is external. One is what is happening on himself. And that happening on himself or oneself, on ourselves, is called samskara. One is the karma phala. I did something wrong. A krodha came and a wave of anger came. And through that wave of anger, I just lost all control over myself. That anger became so strong, it started burning my mind, started burning my heart. My eyes became red, my voice became loud, and my hands became violent. That's what was visible when my anger came. But after the anger left, it will cool down. After some time, it will cool down. Once it cooled down, it left an impression on my mind. That's called the anger impression, the anger samskara. Similarly, there are other things like jealousy samskara. Somebody else is better than me. He is a better speaker than me. He is more beautiful than me. He is richer than me. He is more learned than me. He is more popular than me. This all comparisons, this negative comparisons. Instead of you becoming better, you are looking at that somebody else should, why should he become better than me? So that these repeated thinking create or they mold our character. So our character is nothing but, first of all, we have a thought, a reaction, and we've done it repeatedly. Not just once, not twice. Certain things we have done hundreds of times. Look at it. Once, years ago, there was an article about the social, that time social media was not much, the TV was more in common. So you see some violent movie on TV. And these days, a lot of serials also. And you keep watching. And in the serial, in the TV program, as well as in film or serials, you see violence happening. You're seeing all kinds of not good things being shown. You see it once. It leaves itself, but it leaves an impression on you. So we gather our impressions through our senses, as well as repeatedly seeking or doing that again and again. So if a person sees that violence again and again, it definitely leaves an impression on him. That article said this, which is a very significant point. He said, if a person keeps seeing violence, and these days a lot of violent computer games are also there, where just you take a pistol and you shoot somebody down. That's all digital, but then it is creating an impression on the mind. It is creating a kind of an inner molding of the mind is happening. This is what we have to be very careful. So what we do, what we see, what we think is to be taken care of. That is very important to make a healthy character. Now, Swami Vivekananda said, there are two ideals which are very necessary for building up India. When he says building up India, what he means is building up the people of India, people who are living in India. Swamiji calls it as the national ideals. And what are these national ideals? He says renunciation and service. Now, these two terms, although they are very heavy for a common, let's say, young man who has never been exposed to these ideas. One is renunciation, and then is service. But if you think very carefully, patiently, you will find they are the basis of all noble things in life. One is renunciation. By renunciation is meant giving up of the lower self. Renunciation does not mean giving up everything, including all good things. No, that's not the meaning of renunciation. It means it is giving up of lower things, the lower self. It could be the self-centered living. It could be our lower impulses for anger, greed, etc. It should be giving up of laziness. It could be giving up of greediness. Giving up of all that is what we call belonging to the lower world, the animal part of our nature. So that is called renunciation. So about the idea of renunciation, you have so much of discussion in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita, Sri Krishna is asked this question again and again. In simple sense, we say renunciation when we speak of, it means giving up everything and becoming a monk. No, Sri Krishna says, no, that's not the meaning of renunciation. Just renouncing everything and putting on a certain color of cloth or living a fertile life, that doesn't make you a monk. That can contribute to a monastic principle. And it does help many people, but it may not help also. So what is that? What is the core of renunciation then? Sri Krishna says, a man of renunciation is one who gives up all selfishness. Please remember this. All who gives up is selfishness or self-centered thinking, self-centered living, where we are always concerned only with ourselves. We go on saying, I. We go on repeating that table. We had 2:2:4, 2:3:6, like that. Similarly, we only have I plus I is I plus I. We are always thinking of I. So if we can give up that renunciation, then we gain in our character making. And Swami Vivekananda added to that, he said, there is service, renunciation and service. What is service? The word service, sometimes it is also used to mean any job. Sometimes we say, are you still in service? Which means the government service or any employment. We use the term service for that also. But here that's not meant. Here service is meant unselfish service. Let me give you a very simple example as to how this unselfish service can be of great help even to those people who are suffering from certain mental ailments. There was this lady who was always full of complaint about her family, about her life. And she used to go to a monk, and once she expressed her difficulty to him, and she had done it on earlier occasions also. That day, the monk said, well, are you interested in the solution? She said, yes. Then I will give you a solution, you will have to follow it. She said, okay. He said, without any questioning, you'll have to follow it. She said, okay, then only I'll give my solution. So that was the understanding, that was the contract. So she said, okay. The result was, the monk took her to a dispensary, a charitable dispensary. And he said, now you work here. You come at least once a week. And after you have worked here for some time, then we will talk. So she was good at a certain skill. What was that? She was a good public relation officer. So can you work in the counter where people come and make their entry for getting the treatment? So she was asked and she said, agree. So she worked there. After some 4 or 6 months, she happened to meet the Swamiji again. He asked her, so how is your problem? So how is your life going on? How is your work going on? She said, problem? I have no problems at all. How? You had so many problems. She said, no. Ever since I started working in the charitable dispensary, I saw so many people coming, and each one had so many problems. Either they had, of course, they all had some illness. Then only they came to dispensary. Either they did not have funds at home, money, or there was some difficult domestic situation, or the neighbor was not all right, or somebody had suffered a bereavement. So many reasons. Seeing all that, when I started making a comparison with my own life, I said, oh, I am not facing any issues at all. My own problems are so small in the larger perspective of life. I am missing out what is so very necessary, and I'm just focusing on a few things which I'm lacking. That has changed my life. Look at it. Selfless service could bring this kind of service also to a person's life, this kind of change and transformation. There is another side of service also. There are so many people who are in need of some help. This word goes on only when there are some good people who are helping each other. If the word becomes intensely selfish, the world becomes a terrible place to live at. So Swami Vivekananda said, if you have to bring spirituality or you have to reinvigorate yourself spiritually in India and in every other way in India, you will have to bring the ideal of renunciation and service. You just apply this ideal in your social and economic life also. Although in economy or in what we want to just take up money, even there also, there is a certain amount of honesty which is required. If you don't have honesty, then your trade becomes a terrible place. Economy becomes a terrible place. So also society becomes a terrible place. Suppose there's a leader, a responsible leader, which having a lot of power in his hand. So I'll make a difference between the leader and the power. Power is in the system. The power to do things, to decide resources, how do I utilize the resources, all that is power, that is impersonal. And there is this person who sits there. And the person has got his own selfish agenda. He wants to work for his family. He wants to work for his people, for his own enjoyments, for his own social glory. Do you think that power will be well utilized? That's why I think it is Abraham Lincoln who is supposed to have said, if you want to test a man, don't give him trouble, give him power. So if you give him only power without the inner resources, it will be just like giving AK-47 in the hands of a monkey. Just give him and then run from there. Because what he is going to do, it is beyond our imagination. It is a monkey mind. So likewise, if a person does not have a commitment to social good, to what we call as renunciation and service, getting power in his hand is a very major threat to the society. We hear about these stories all over. Somewhere, some dictator in some country, some Scandinavian country, some African country. And in our own country, there are so many people who have come to very bad shape because they did not follow the principle of renunciation and service. So renunciation is not just some external giving up. It is giving up of your self-centeredness, giving up of the lower thing. In the Upanishads, it comes that if a person gives up all his lower desires, it is known as Eshanatraya Tyagaha, then he becomes an immortal. Think of it, renunciation makes you immortal. Already you are immortal in that sense, in the Upanishadic sense, but you discover that only by giving up of your desires, lower desires. We are not asking, or the scriptures are not advising, or Swami Vivekananda is not advising us to give up all desires right from the beginning and say, oh, I'll become desireless, including I'll give up the desire for higher life also. No, that's not the meaning. So in our country, in our culture, we have a graded philosophy. The more you give up your self-centeredness, more kind, more loving, more compassionate you become. Why we can't experience these higher qualities? Because we are concerned only about ourselves. The more we come out of a small, narrow thing, the more our civilizational and cultural development takes place. So in sum, to summarize what I have been saying for last 40 plus minutes, when we are speaking of the Rashtra Nirmana, the best recipe is Atma Nirmana or Atma Vikas. And this is one thing which even UNESCO long ago said in one of its documents, in its preamble, it said, because all the wars ultimately start from the human heart, it is there that we have to work first. So the violence comes from the heart, which means it comes from our mind, from our thinking, from our likes and dislikes, from our strong sense of violence or strong attachments, it is there that the violence comes. And from there, from the mind, then it gets converted into further thinking, planning, and of course, its execution in the form of war. So it is there, the deeper level of man-making. Swami Vivekananda called his whole message as man-making message, making a complete human being, not just a half human being. So a person may be very rich, very well educated in the sense, he may have a lot of the skills, but if he has not got well established in higher values, in character building, in spirituality, then his development has not been complete. And Swami Vivekananda said, our country needs heroes. Be a hero. Now, the word hero does not mean the film hero. It does not mean what we see on the film, somebody being shown as a hero. No. By hero is meant a true Nayaka. Nayaka means one who takes, niyate iti, one who takes you forward, who is a hero in a real life, not just on the screen where the director and the producer and the light man and the dialogue and the screenwriter, everybody has produced their effect and you have become a hero. No, that's not that kind of hero. But the hero where you are in day-to-day life, there could be some lady living in a small house. She could be a great hero. A young boy somewhere in a village could be a wonderful hero. He may have been working silently to bring education or environmental changes in his place. To become hero does not mean that you become very famous or the more and more people would admire you. No, by being a hero means becoming heroic. Dhira. The word dhira in Sanskrit means this. A person should be able to have courage and patience to carry on the ideal which he accepts. So what is Swami Vivekananda's message in the subject that we have chosen, we have been discussing this evening? His message is finally that we must hold on to the ideal of renunciation and service if we have to do the true nation building. And this holding on to the ideal of renunciation and service will happen only if we have enough time to spend over, to think over, to reflect, and also to bring changes in our life, in our lifestyle, in our thinking, the way we look at the world, and practice the virtues of renunciation, of giving, of helping, of overcoming our petty interests. Then only we can truly do the nation building. Nation building is not just about infrastructure development, though that is important. It's not about just developing ourselves scientifically and technologically, that's important. Or developing yourself at the international level or at the political level, that all has its importance. But the real thing is that we have to develop our character, we have to develop our spiritual side. So with this, I conclude. So once again, my thanks to all the organizers, to Ranjanji and also the professor and Swami Viveka Vani, and my thanks to everyone for your patient hearing. Thank you very much. Namaste.
So thank you so much, Swamiji. As you said, that there are two ideals which is necessary to build India. As Swamiji says, the national ideals as renunciation and the service. Let us all work upon this. So Swamiji, we thank you for this thought-provoking session. And now let us go for some of the questions and the feedbacks from the participants. So now among with us, there are some of the messages personally I got, and some of the messages in the chat box they have mentioned personally to me. So among with us, Dr. Dhanesh Kumar, he's here, so he can unmute himself and he can talk. Professor Dhanesh Kumar sir, he's an academic counselor and of Mangalore University, and also he's a principal of Department of Physiotherapy in ITE deemed to be University. Sir, over to you. Yes.
Pujya Swamiji, Sw Atmashraddhanandaji. Namaste. We are extremely happy and very fortunate to listen to the Swamiji's thought-provoking lecture on these things. In fact, we could read the Swamiji is a Vedic scholar, was the editor of Vedic Vedanta Kesari, the journal. And Swamiji, we are very much, clear with the things of the Hitopadesha and the renunciation, how exactly the abandonment of the today's life, what we call as a material comforts, how exactly these material comforts are the limitations or restrictions in our regular or personality. So how exactly to achieve the spiritual life, where exactly the renunciation helps us, and how exactly these krodha samskaras and lobha samskaras and moha samskaras, all these what we call it as arishadvargas, these shadvargas, all these samskaras are exactly how exactly is our enemies, and how we are today's life struggling to overcome these enemies. And we are very the way of the moral preparations and the other way of different preparations in shaping our totality and personality. So moving towards how, so thereby we are trying to moving towards the what we call it as the self unfoldment towards the divinity, or self unfoldment towards the inner perfection by through the augmenting the inner potential. This is what exactly we could learn from today's Swamiji's the thought-provoking lecture. And definitely the students of Mangalore University will take up the very good lesson from this, especially if not exactly following up with the entire things. I agree with that today's materialistic life, there is a limitations, but definitely some kind of a moral code of conduct and some kind of the niyamas or yamas or all these the principles, basic principles, definitely we can take as a message of today's Atma Vikas from Swami Atmashraddhananda. And definitely, Swamiji, your the words to refer the Parivrajaka, the memoirs of European travel, the Bengali script of Swami Vivekanandaji, and also about the Columbus, definitely we are not going through it, but taking your the positive thoughts, we'll go through it and we'll try to inculcate and teach our students as a professor and as a faculty, teaching around 300 and odd students. So we are also very proud to associate with Ramakrishna Mission in all the activities. So definitely with all this, the Atma Vikas, we should move towards the Rastra Vikas, and there we should develop a culture among us to build a strong nation. And that is what today's message. And thank you very much for the opportunity given by the Ramakrishna Mission, today's Sri Ranjan Bellarpadi. And once again, I thank Swamiji from bottom of heart, Swami Atmashraddhanandaji. Thank you.
Very nice. Very happy to hear from you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yes, now we have along with us Dr. Samskriti Gulwadi. She's Assistant Professor in Department of Mass Communication, University of Technology and Applied Sciences, Salah Sultanate of Oman. So she is speaking from Oman. So now I request her to unmute herself, and you can talk with Swamiji. Yes, madam, over to you. You can unmute yourself. Yes, please.
Swamiji, namaste.
Okay.
Thank you to Ranjanji and also Swami Jitakamanandaji for giving me this opportunity to not only listen to the wise words and messages of Swami Vivekananda from the intellectual thoughts of Swami Atmashraddhanandaji. Listening to Swami Vivekananda's messages or ideals is always like rekindling the spark in our lives, and there is never an expiry date to such kind of important thoughts or ideals that Swami Vivekananda has set forth for us, and we can see how relevant he is in spite of so many years of him leaving his physical body. He's still relevant to us irrespective of whether we are young or old. So he is, we could say, an immortal person and a personality, so to say. And Swamiji, today you have touched upon so many important points that are applicable to all of us, whether we are students or whether we are, I mean, whatever profession we belong to, or we belong to any class or whatever. And also, I mean, it is very difficult to pinpoint like, okay, this was more important or that was more important. So everything that you spoke had so much of value in it. And I especially like that anecdote when you shared about the Gujarat University professor of how her student had looked at the definition of personality development. And it makes me think or rethink as to how we are limiting ourselves to defining personality only from the external point of view, rather than introspect or look into ourselves. And this is where I think Swami Vivekananda's ideals or principles that he put forth about renunciation and service come in place, because this is where we actually have to think about, rather than just focusing on our outer appearance or our so-called etiquette, which makes us a civilized person. Again, we have to redefine and relook at the word civilized, I think. And yeah, talking about service, it reminds me, like, as a child, I think most of you would have experienced this as children. Whenever we used to get a bar of dairy milk or some chocolate, we would be asked by our family members to distribute it amongst our family members, and we would be left with just one piece of chocolate for ourselves, a small one. But over the years, we have seen that there has been so much of development in our family values and upbringing that we feel that instead of bringing one chocolate, let me get a chocolate for everyone in the house. So the concept of sharing has changed, I think, from that small aspect to a certain extent. And even if we look at it from the media perspective, me being from the media background, communication background, I feel that to a certain extent, the advertisements that we see on TV, where it is contrasting the family values that we were brought up. Like the example I gave you of sharing that small piece of chocolate. Today we see the advertisements where one person is having the entire bar of chocolate without sharing it with another person. So it might look very trivial, but then it has a lot of hidden message as to how our thoughts are shaping our personality. And also, like when you spoke about how things, the kind of violence that we consume and so on, I think this also has a lot to do with our choice of things around us. We spend so much of time to choose a dress for ourselves, or to choose a specific product for ourselves, or maybe something for our house. But do we think about what we are consuming for our mind? So this is something that your talk inspired, or which helped us to think about. Let us be thoughtful in choosing what we consume as well.
Yes.
So thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Very true. Very true.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Samskriti Gulwadi. She was speaking from Oman, Sultanate of Oman. Thank you so much for connecting us. Swamiji, some of the people, they have a question in the chat box, and people can raise a hand and you can ask the questions directly with Swamiji if time permits. Swamiji, one of the questions that from Pavitra Kumar from Srinivasa University, she asked that, Swamiji, what kind of education we need to bring in India? Or do you feel that present education system is really bringing samskara among youngsters? Swamiji.
Today's education that we are getting is very lopsided. Lopsided in the sense, one side is very well emphasized. That is the intellectual side. That too, not even the intellectual side. It is the marks side. Marks. How much marks I will get? What are my grades? So if people, they become so petty about small change in their marks also. So it's very lopsided. It is rather deficient. Now, one is the change which the government should bring. The other is I cannot ask the government to immediately do. They have their own political reasons. They have their own practical reasons for doing or not doing things. So I can, at my level, I can supplement my education. So let me supplement my education. How? See, one thing is that I must expose myself to great ideals. Somehow there has been a kind of a narrative in our social and in the media and society, where we say that we have to learn everything from the West. No, that's not so. We have to learn a few things from the West. We have to learn some great things from the West, but not everything. We have our own heroes. We have our own great kings. We had great soldiers, commanders, or saints who are men of character. Or there have been some very common people who have been great men of or women of character. So first is those stories we must hear. Secondly, you must you can strengthen yourself by reading the works of Swami Vivekananda. So just don't think that well, we are the followers of Vivekananda and we are telling people to read Vivekananda. It's not like that. Sister Nivedita, who wrote the introduction to Swami Vivekananda's complete works 100 years back, more than 100 years back, she made a very significant statement. She said, it is not just teachings of Vivekananda that you're reading. It is through these teachings that you're reading the message of India. It is the very rock bottom of Hinduism, which you are reading, say, in future. If some mother has to say, she writes to her child, my child, this is a religion you were born in. How will she tell this? Read Vivekananda. This is your religion. This is the culture into which you are born in. So let us make it a habit. So if you find it difficult to take up all the 9 volumes of, let us make our own scheme. So the Ramakrishna Math, different centers, they have brought out small booklets. Say they have brought out the Karma Yoga, they have brought Way to Success, a different collection of Swamijis teachings. You can start reading them and then graduate to reading all the volumes.
Yes.
Third thing is, let us try to bring in some change in our habits. Why not we bring certain amount of habit of donation? I'm not asking for any money, nor the Ramakrishna Mission is asking for any money. We are just asking one thing: learn to be charitable. You see, being at charity is considered part of certain religions. For instance, in Islam, you have the idea of zakat, which is 2% of their income should be given for the development of Islam. Similarly, in the Christians, for the church you have to do. What about those who are following the Sanatana Dharma? Should they not be contributing something for the good of others? So it's not just money. It could be anything that you wish to. You could share information. You can do Shramadana. You can do the Arthadana, anything. Let us come out of a little narrow thing. So this service, reading, and exposing ourselves to these great narratives and stories of our own past, that should very much strengthen our education.
Yes, thank you so much, Swamiji. So, as you mentioned, you're pleased to read listeners that to read Colombo to Almora. That book is available in Ramakrishna Math bookstall. So you can come to ashram in the Mangala Devi, next to the Mangala Devi temple, and you can buy that book. Along with this, I want to mention here the Swamiji, Swami Atmashraddhanandaji, when he was editor of Vedanta Kesari, he edited and compiled few books, very precious books. So it is, one is the Swami Vivekananda, The Charm of His Personality and the Messages, the collection of articles, the wonderful book. And one more is the Channeling Youth Power. So Channeling Youth Power. It is also available in our bookstore. And Swamiji has collected some of the very interesting titles, that is Universal Prayers for Youths, and Bhagavad Gita for students, and Upanishads for students, and Student Vows, which means a manual for character building. These are the interesting titles Swamiji has edited, and which is available in our Ramakrishna Math bookstall. I'll put the contact number in the WhatsApp group so that you can call to that number and order your book. It is available to your doorstep. We can courier it, those titles. I'll send the photos of that books in the WhatsApp group, which is you can order through that number. Okay, so so let us go for the one more question. We have among with us, we have Professor Raj Mohan, who is a retired sir, you can turn on your camera. The Professor Raj Mohan is a retired principal from one of the prestigious college in Mangalore, Govindadasa College. And after that, he's in charge of various projects in Mangaluru. He is head of Nagarika Salaha Samiti. It's awakened citizens of Surathkal region, where they're doing Swachh Surathkal Abhiyan, along with the under the guidance of Ramakrishna Mission Mangaluru Abhiyan. So he raised his hand. He want to ask a question and the feedback. So over to you, Professor Raj Mohan, sir.
Namaste. I am very much influenced by the two things that you spoke about: renunciation and service. Renunciation of our self-centered thoughts or living, and selfless service. In fact, I have tried to inculcate both the values in my life. But my concern is this, Swamiji. Our children, they're all exposed to the digital media now. Because of online classes, everyone is having a mobile or a tab. But what happens is that after the class is over, they try to go through the internet, various websites, and they particularly log on to some cartoons or games where killing is glorified. So when that is the case, how can we influence them and bring them back to the values that are propagated by Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda, and also Ramakrishna Math? Just now, Ranjan was telling that lots of books are being printed to teach values. But how to take it to these young minds? They are the backbone of our society. They are the future generation. So how can we influence them? Now they are totally carried away by this digital media. Even I have seen my granddaughter. She wants some cartoon to be played while eating her meals. So that addiction, really, it is paining me. So what do you suggest, Swamiji, in that case?
You are very right. You have raised a very pragmatic and very relevant issue. That is digital world, how it is creating a completely new problem for us. We didn't have so much of distraction from the social media or from the digital world so much as we have now. At least people of our generation or your generation, we had no such issues. But we have this big issue now. So even it's not just Indian, it is throughout the world. This is a big thing which is being done. And there are some very good books which have come up which speak on how we are being controlled by the kind of stimulation that we get by this social media. So it is we are talking to somebody, immediately we want to check what is the what's the message has come, what's the email has come, or let me go and relax myself by going to some YouTube video and all that. So this is definitely a big issue for us. Now you said, what could be the solution? Maybe we should devise, as academicians, as thinkers, we should devise certain courses to sensitize the young mind as to how the digital world is making enslave of them. It's almost like an addiction. People are junky, they get addicted to certain things. So similarly, we get addicted to certain things. When the fire is used for cooking, it's wonderful. But if it is left unkept or unattended, it can burn a house. But it is not the fault of the fire. It's the fault of the person who is handling the fire. So likewise, who is handling the media or the whatever digital thing that we have? That is what we need to. Maybe we should come up with certain courses. We should try to sensitize people. We should try to make people aware how they are getting affected. And This is one side. The other side, we could also bring in more and more the content of Swamiji's teaching the digital world. That also should be tried. And independently, many people are doing, though in a very systematic or a very organized way, it is yet to take place. But that's also happening. Many individuals are doing it. That is to be appreciated for that. So maybe, together we can work on and see how we can turn our youth. Maybe they can conduct, certain camps. I went to one place in somewhere in North India, where if somebody enters that place, they have to keep their camera out, which means that cell phone out for 2 days if they have to go and stay there. Maybe such kind of weaning out for an occasional thing also will be very helpful. In days to come, it's going to be a very big challenge for us. We are heading towards that. We are not aware of it. We'll only suddenly see its result. Particularly the artificial intelligence and digital technologies, next generation equipments are going to change our life in a still much bigger way. So it's a time for us to think about all these things in a serious way.
So thank you, Swamiji. So we have one more last feedback on the question. So we have with us Mr. Girish Kumar. He is the principal of Podar International School in Mangalore. Mr. Girish sir, can you please turn on your camera and talk with Swamiji? Yes. Yes.
Namaste. I hope I am audible to all.
Yes. Yes.
My reverences to Param Pujya Swami Atmashraddhanandaji. It was wonderful listening to you. I was very closely associated with Vivekananda Kendra, working in Northeast Arunachal with Arun Jyoti project. And I say after that, I could not give much of my time. But then when I was going through the discourse, I realized social opinion that makes us moral. This is actually something which we all need to think. It is not our conscience. It is actually some social pressure on us that makes us truthful. Majority, to an extent, yes. And for Rashtra Nirman, as Swamiji said, this is very important. The youth should think in the right direction. Swamiji, I just wanted to know, see, today you might see, when I see the television news and media, social media and all, I find a lot of youth coming out, helping people during the pandemic, during the, there are a lot of examples. So is it really that the things are changing and people are orienting towards the right spirit, or it is something else that makes them to think in that line, to keep themselves in limelight? Actually, sometimes I get confused. So I thought I would ask your opinion on this.
I think there is a mixture. There is a good deal of people doing certain good things because they want some social attention. I have seen actually myself once in a place, a person vegetable cutting in one of the ashrams, and that person just came and he cut 2 potatoes and took a picture and put it on his Facebook and disappeared. So that's very unfortunate. He really did not do anything. He only took a picture of it. So there is a certain degree of people who are doing this. But essentially, Swami Vivekananda makes a very remarkable statement in Lectures from Colombo to Almora, that more materialism grows, there is a more chance of people actually turning towards spirituality. Very strange. Because you become more and more tired of spiritual things, material things. Why? Because you become more, you see how nashwar they are. In Sanskrit, it's in nashwar. Nashwar means that it's only flimsy, it's only for some time. Whatever enjoyment I may have through my senses, whatever objects which may satisfy me they are only for time being. They are not eternal. So that realization, when it comes, people naturally turn towards spirituality. And spirituality, of course, means renunciation and service. Of course, it means meditation. It means unselfishness. There is also one danger which we should be very careful, and that is some people get into too much of the very spooky things. Very spooky things. There's a very mysterious thing is happening. So that is some kind of a some influence is coming from a mysterious source. Those things should be avoided. We should simply stick to the spiritual side of life, to the right royal path that has been shown to us. And Swami Vivekananda, in one of his letters, he emphasizes this. He said, even when the writing of Swamiji, Sri Ramakrishna's biography, he says we must emphasize on his character building and spiritual practices more than certain miracles which he has done. Not that miracles are bad, but what happens is people forget the actual purpose of coming of these great people and become busy with the miracles. So real miracle is that man can overcome his lower nature and discover his higher nature. That's a real miracle. And I think more and more youth, when they see this kind of frustration which comes to them, they turn towards spirituality. But there's a mixture, as you said. There's a mixture.
Yes. So thank you so much, Swamiji. So we are coming to the last part of the session. So we are heading towards the vote of thanks. So among with us is Dr. Chandru Hegde. He's a coordinator of Swami Vivekananda Study Centre, Mangalore University, and he's a doctor and the professor in the Department of Mathematics in Mangalore University. So, Dr. Chandru Hegde, sir, please.
Thank you, Ranjan. Am I audible?
Yes, please, sir.
Thank you. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose vote of thanks on this occasion, Viveka Vani Lecture Series number 6. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Study Centre, Mangalore and Ramakrishna Math Mangaluru, first of all, my sincere thanks to Pujya Swami Atmashraddhanandaji for inspiring and very informative talk on Atma Vikas, Swami Vivekananda's recipe of Rastra Nirman. Thank you, Swamiji. Your thoughts have been enlightened our minds and shown a new path. Thank you very much. I express my sincere thanks to Ramakrishna Math Mangaluru for support to conduct every activity of Swami Vivekananda Study Centre. Special thanks to Swami Ekagamyanandaji for guidance. And also I thank Shri Ranjan Bellarpadi and his team for excellent work and support to organize this wonderful program. I thank the Vice Chancellor, Professor P. Subramania Adapataya, and the Registrar, Professor Kishore Kumar Sikya of Mangalore University for their constant support and support to extend the activities of Swami Vivekananda Study Centre. I thank Professor Sripati Kaluraya, convener of Swami Vivekananda Study Centre, and I thank all the participants for their participation and a grand success. Thank you one and all. Thank you very much.
Swamiji, at last, it's important to mention, the session went very well and nearly about 200 participants participated. And now even today, till now, about 111 participants are in the room. We are very happy that 4 reputed university of our city and out of the city, say Mangalore University, Aditya Changiri University, Nitte University, and Srinivasa University, they participated in the yes, they participated actively and thoroughly throughout the session, and nearly about 17 colleges participated in this program, and the 2 departments of Mangalore University. And I also thank every authority of Mangalore University and Pujya Swamijis of our ashram for this wonderful opportunity to hear from you. So thank you so much for Swamiji for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much. Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Yes. And this lecture is available in the YouTube. If you want to hear it again, you can go back to the Ramakrishna Math Mangaluru YouTube page, where you can hear Swamiji's lecture and the previous talks of Viveka Vani series. So thank you so much for everyone. So let us end with the Shanti mantra. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
I take it.
Thank you so much. Namaste, Swamiji. Jai Ramakrishna. Yes. So we will put the books, pictures in the WhatsApp group, and I request every people who are present here, do not leave the group. The group will be active, and it's admin only group, so that you won't get many messages. Only the important messages will come from the admins. And the book stalls, our Ramakrishna Mission Mangaluru's book stalls number will be given there. You can call and order the book. Ramakrishna Math Mangalurina Pustakalayada phone number anna ನಾವು WhatsApp group ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಹಾಕ್ತೇವೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಿದಂತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದಂತಹ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನ ತಾವು ಫೋನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೊಂಡುಕೊಳ್ಳಬಹುದಾಗಿದೆ. ಅಂತೆಯೇ ತಾವು ಇರುವಂತಹ ವಾಟ್ಸ್ಆಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಅನ್ನ ಬಿಡುವಂತಹ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕೆಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ವಾಟ್ಸ್ಆಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಮುಂದೆಯೂ ಸಹ ಮುಂದುವರಿಲಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದರಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂತಹ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯವನ್ನ ಮತ್ತು ಸಂದೇಶವನ್ನ ಆ ವಾಟ್ಸ್ಆಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಹಂಚಿಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಕೆಲವರು ಇವತ್ತಿನ ದಿವಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಓದುವಂತದ್ದು ಬಹಳ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆಡಿಯೋ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳೇನಾದ್ರೂ ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ಇದೆಯಾ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಆಡಿಯೋ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳು ಸದ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ತಾವು ಹುಡುಕಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಕೇಳಬಹುದು ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದರಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂತೆ. ಮತ್ತು ತಾವು ರಾಮಕೃಷ್ಣ ಮಠ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ಪೇಜ್ಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದರಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂತಹ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ ಮತ್ತು ಪ್ರವಚನಗಳು ನಮಗೆ ಲಭ್ಯವಿದೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತಾವು ಪ್ರವಚನವನ್ನ ಕೇಳಬಹುದು, ಚಿಂತನೆಯನ್ನ ನಡೆಸಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಇಚ್ಛೆ ಪಡ್ತೇನೆ. ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನವರು ತಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಇತ್ತು, ಸಮಯ ಅಭಾವ ಇರುವುದರಿಂದ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಯನ್ನು ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಕ್ಷಮೆ ಇರಲಿ. ಮುಂದಿನ ದಿವಸದಲ್ಲಿ ತಮ್ಮ ಏನು ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಾವು ಸಮಯ ಆದಲ್ಲಿ ತಾವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಯನ್ನ ಕೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ಪ್ರೀತಿಪೂರ್ವಕ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಸೊ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ, ಮ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ, ನಿಟ್ಟೆ ಡೀಮ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ, ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ, ಆದಿಚುಂಚನಗಿರಿ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಮಂಡ್ಯ, ಅಂತೆಯೇ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ವರ್ಕ್, Department of Yogic Science, SDM College of MBA, Government First Grade College Punjalkatte, Ambika Mahavidyalaya Putturu, Nitte Degree College Nitte, Bandarkars College Kundapura, Bhuvanendra College Karkala, Matte Manjunatha Pai Memorial College Karkala, Mattu Government First Grade College Ajjarakadu, next to Rukmini Shetty Memorial College, then Government First Grade College Shankar Narayana, then Purna Pragna College Udupi, Government First Grade College Tenkanadiyuru, Government First Grade College Kapu, Canara College Mangaluru, St. Mary's College Shilpa, Government First Grade College Hiriyadka. ಸೊ ಇದಿಷ್ಟು ಕಾಲೇಜಿನವರು ಸಹ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 17 ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸಹಕರಿಸಿದಂತಹ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರು ಏನು ತಾವು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳನ್ನ ಸಂಪರ್ಕ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವರನ್ನ ವಾಟ್ಸ್ಆಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ನ ಸೇರಿಸಿದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಶಸ್ವಿಯಾಗಿದೆ, ಸಹಕರಿಸಿದ್ರಿ. ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಾನು ಪ್ರೀತಿಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದಂತಹ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನ ತಿಳಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಮುಂದೆಯೂ ಸಹ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ಮತ್ತು ರಾಮಕೃಷ್ಣ ಮಿಷನ್ ಮತ್ತು ಮಠ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ಇವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಸಂಪರ್ಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳ ಏಳಿಗೆಗೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗುತ್ತೋ ಅಂತಹ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ನಾವು ನಿರಂತರವಾಗಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ತಮ್ಮ ಸಂಪರ್ಕ ಮತ್ತು ಸಹಕಾರ ನಮಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಅತ್ಯಗತ್ಯ ಅಂತ ಈಗ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತೇನೆ. ಸೊ ಮತ್ತೇನಾದ್ರೂ ತಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು ಇದ್ದಲ್ಲಿ ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕವಾಗಿ ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಸಂಪರ್ಕಿಸಬಹುದು. ನನ್ನ ಸಂಖ್ಯೆ ವಾಟ್ಸ್ಆಪ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಆಶ್ರಮದ ಕುರಿತಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತು ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಕೇಂದ್ರದ ಕುರಿತಾಗಿ ಏನೇ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳಿದ್ದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಸಂಪರ್ಕಿಸಬಹುದಾಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನ ಮುಕ್ತಾಯಗೊಳಿಸೋಣ. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ಶುಭರಾತ್ರಿ. ಸೊ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು, ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
ಜೈ ರಾಮಕೃಷ್ಣ.
Thank you.